This will be part one of doing control arm bushings on the Tacoma. First you'll have to remove the wheels. So for this you'll have to remove the lug nuts, loosen them before you jack the car all the way up. Then you can go ahead and jack off the cross member there. Set it securely on jack stands. And once you're on the jack stand, you can finish removing the lug nuts and taking the wheel off. Next, you'll have to remove the upper ball joint. And I messed up here, but I'll explain what I messed up on in a little bit. So loosen the nut, don't take it all the way off. The other side popped right out with just a couple of whacks with a hammer. Here I got frustrated and hit it far too many times, which damaged the nut. So I had to deal with that later. Moving on, I'm taking off the strut. And you don't have to do this if you can get that ball joint out without having to use a press. I ended up having to use a press, so I had to remove the strut in order to get the press around the upper control arm. So here I am using the press to break the ball joint out of the upper control arm. And then to loosen the nut off of the ball joint, I used a C-clamp to press that ball joint kind of back up into the upper control arm just to keep the ball joint from spinning while I loosened that nut off. And the nut was kind of gross, so the threads were pretty boogered. You can't see here, but trust me, they were boogered. I ended up using a new nut. But with that out of the way, you can loosen the upper control arm. This kind of gets awkward if the bolt starts turning in there. You've got to reach around the top of the fender to hold the other end of the bolt while you loosen the nut. But now the upper control arm is loose, and we can go on to removing all the other bits that are attached to the lower control arm. So this is the anti-sway bar. It's not under load since I already did the other side, but if yours is under load, you might have to jack up on the lower control arm just to relieve some tension so you can pull the link out without it going sproing. Here I'm taking the hub assembly off of the lower control arm. This is kind of awkward. It'd be best to loosen these before you disconnected the steering rack or the tie rod end there, because the hub is just kind of flip-flops there. I had to use my foot and it was pretty awkward. And make sure you mark where your cam adjusters are on the lower control arm. That will allow you to get them back kind of close when you assemble it, so you can drive to the alignment shop without swerving all over the road. So this is, you want to make sure that you turn the bolt side of, of this unit. You'll see once you get it out that the back side, which looks like the nut that's attached to an adjuster, does not turn unless you take the bolt out. So the bolt comes out, and then you can separate both halves from the bushing. So I marked the two halves. I marked them so that I would keep them together as a pair. I marked them front and rear. I don't know if that's needed. I did it just out of habit. I think they're the same, but I marked them. And with that out, you can pull the adjuster out. I used a rubber mallet. They were a little stubborn on one side, but they came out without too much drama. You can see that one's a little rusted in there, but really not bad. I've heard horror stories of those getting really rusted and people having to use hacksaws and stuff to get them out, but I didn't have any of those problems. The This is me just marking the other half so that they're a complete pair now. And then the control arm is just ready to come out. I used rubber mallet to tap it. It was giving me a little bit of trouble. I had it kind of cockeyed trying to come out. So, but there you have it. It does weigh about 30 or so pounds, so it'll clunk solidly to the floor if you don't support it. You have to remove the air box and an ABS, not ABS, an airbag sensor in order to get the upper control arm bolt out. I'm sorry for the poor shot here, but there's 3 bolts on the air box. 2 of them are captive, 1 is not. And then the clamp on the intake boot, and it'll come right out. And there's a bolt or a nut on the ABS sensor, and then you can reach under and hold the control arm while you work that big foot-long bolt out of there. And there she is. She's ready for phase 2.